Welcome everyone to Textiles and Tea and with the Handweavers Guild of America. We're excited to have you here today. I'm Kathy Group. I'm the advertising manager, and today I'll be your host. We are excited to thank our sponsor today, Camelin K. Leon. Thank you, Camelin. We appreciate you being our sponsor today for Elizabeth. It'll be a wonderful program. So thank you so much for being our sponsor. As always, the questions are at the last part of the show, about the last 15 minutes. If you would put them in the Q&A. If they're in the chat, I can't always see them. We love your chats, though. Keep those comments coming. We love those. Today, we are excited to have Elizabeth Buckley. Elizabeth is a second-generation tapestry artist, and she's a teacher for over 50 years. She teaches online as well to an international student base and in person at regional weaving conferences, retreat centers, and weaving guilds throughout the U.S. Her work has evolved from using techniques of the Mexican and Rio Grande traditions to those of French tapestry. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. Her tapestries have a lengthy exhibit history, including 2023's American Tapestry Biennial, 14, where her work won the second place Teitelbaum Award. Elizabeth and her work have been featured in Fiber Art Now and in books by Carol Russell, Micala Sidore, and Tommye Scanlin. So we are so excited to have her here today. Hey, Elizabeth.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing just fine.
Great. We're so excited you're here.
Well, I'm happy to be here. It's a lovely spring day here.
Oh, good, good. So what is your favorite tea?
I like chai. I'm right now drinking a decaf chai because it's later in the afternoon. I don't want to be awake at night, but that's my favorite.
I love chai. That's my favorite too. So if you would talk a little bit about how you got started in fiber.
Well, my mother, when I was about 10 years old, she started exploring weaving and the fiber arts. This was after she'd gone through her master's degree program in art education. And then after all that, she ended up discovering weaving and textiles and dyeing and spinning and just got totally enthusiastic about it all. It looked really interesting to me, so I asked her if I could do something. So she set me up on a cardboard loom. She strung up a cardboard loom, gave me some nice bright colored yarns to work with and a needle and showed me the basics of over and under, and away I went. And I've been weaving ever since.
Well, how old were you when you started on cardboard loom?
10 years old.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so good. I love stories like that. So what, if I can jump in here, what did your parents think of your career? What did they say when you were like, I'm doing this for forever?
Basically, they supported me. My mom basically said, you need to find a way to support it though, because you won't you won't be able to earn a living doing it. So over the years, I worked as a production weaver and various other sorts of part-time jobs to support the artistic habit, shall we say. And now I can support it by my teaching because I've gotten a nice audience now of people all over the world with thanks to internet and online teaching. I have a very broad student base now, which is a delightful thing to do.
We're going to talk about that some more later too. But as I read your introduction, one of the things I've talked about was that you started out with what's called the Mexican and Rio Grande style. And then I also read that you started incorporating Peter Collingwood's book, and that eventually you went to the Aubusson technique out of France.
Yes.
So what was that like to go from one to the other? Was it kind of a gradual, or like, oh, I need to do this differently?
Well, when I was first learning tapestry, this would have been in the late 1960s, early 1970s. What was out there in the way of books to help you along was pretty limited. It was like 3 different books. We had Joanne Hall's Mexican Tapestry Techniques, we had Peter Collingwood's rug making book, and we had Rachel Brown's spinning and weaving and dyeing book. So Rachel Brown was from the Rio Grande tradition, Joanne Hall, the Mexican tapestry tradition, and then Peter Collingwood. So I was kind of juggling those three, bodies of knowledge as I was exploring weaving tapestry and learning to weave row by row. The rug making tradition where you hide all the ends or splice them so you have a clean front, clean back, all of that was part of my beginning steps in tapestry. And then I got to a point where, and I was also weaving without pre-designing. So I would sit in mornings and just kind of weave from the gut, see what I had woven before, and then go from there. And my design started getting more and more complex to the point that I would spend more time staring at the tapestry than weaving, trying to figure out where I needed to go next. And it was at this juncture where I realized I needed to find a way to make a roadmap and find a way to get a sense of where I'm going. And so started looking around. And at that point in time, Jean-Pierre Larochette and Yael Larette were starting to teach here in the United States, what they called on-the-road workshops, traveling from guild to guild teaching. When I saw their work, it was just totally blew me away. And I also knew immediately they were the teachers I needed to work with. So I just enthusiastically just embraced whatever it is they could teach me. I was like this thirsty sponge. And I was so thrilled to be learning what they had to teach me. And that's kind of the transition I made.
So what was it that you saw in their work that spoke to you so much? Was it like the color use or?
The color use, the shading techniques, the visual rhythm, their use of values, their tapestries have this particular quality of light about them that just enthralled me, and a visual rhythm about their sense of design that also enthralled me. And I wanted to learn how they synchronize technique with image, how they could think about the sensibility you need to have to design and weave for the loom with the techniques to get those wonderful images. And I also knew that Jean-Pierre had come from multiple generations of tapestry weavers. So it was information and knowledge about how to make roadmaps, how to do cartoons, how to think about what you're weaving before you hit the loom. And I knew I needed to get that kind of information about that piece of the process. And they both taught me a lot about that as well.
The people are already asking the names of those artists. So it was Jean-Pierre.
Jean-Pierre Larochette, Larochette, and Yael is Yael, and Lurie is Lurie. They're husband and wife, and work collaboratively as a team. Yael primarily does the designing, and Jean-Pierre primarily does the weaving, but as he would say, well, who knows where one person leaves off and the other person picks up. They work together for decades, for so long that it becomes kind of like group mind when they produce their works. He has recently written a book put out by Schiffer called The Anatomy of Tapestry, which has a lot of his information on specific techniques. Really beautiful book. Yael illustrated it, and then his daughter, their daughter Yadine, is a textile conservator, so she also contributed to the book as well.
Now, did you also go to France to study?
I did.
Can you talk about that some?
I will be happy to talk about that. Yes, how I got to France. Well, at first I studied with Jean-Pierre. I basically took one workshop a year. I would go home from one workshop and weave, thinking about and all the stuff that I had learned in that workshop, then go back for another workshop to get more information. And after about 3 or 4 years of doing this, Jean-Pierre basically told me, you need to go to Aubusson next now, Elizabeth, because you will get a different kind of sensibility about how all this works together. And he was so right. I had the opportunity to study with Giselle and Henri Brivet in Aubusson. And in Giselle's case, it was the women in her family that wove. She's from Felleton originally, but had her studio in Aubusson. So Jean-Pierre's family, it was the men in the family that wove. In Giselle's family, it was the women. And she and her husband Henri also worked collaboratively. And Henri also taught at the Tapestry Design Center there in Aubusson. And he was teaching cartoon making and tapestry design. So it was, again, that sense marriage of the design sensibilities and the technique. And it was just an amazing, amazing time to be there. This was in the early 1990s many, many decades before UNESCO declared Aubusson as a World Heritage Site for the tapestry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's one of the only places in the world where for 600 years they had all the makings and components for making tapestry, from the sheep to the spinning, to the mills, to the dye plants, the water, the making of the tapestry, the weaving of the tapestries, and the restoration of the tapestry for 6 centuries. So this is a place where the air is like tapestry. So you step into a timeless place where you could have been in any century when you're walking down some of the old streets in Aubusson. And in Giselle's atelier, I was weaving on looms that were several hundred years old. I was using hand beaters that had been used for 4 generations in our family. There was this whole permeation of sensibility of tapestry that you just kind of came in through your pores as you were just there in the ambiance. In addition to living, sleeping, thinking, weaving tapestry, total immersion. It was also done in French, so I was also learning all this in another language, in addition to the language of the loom that is kind of that common language we all share. So it was weeks and weeks of total immersion. When I wasn't weaving, I was looking at historical tapestries and seeing how they applied, particularly techniques like hachures and shading techniques, how that was applied to drape a fabric, architecture elements, tapestries that were mural sized, eye levels a third of the way up, just getting a sense of scale and proportion and just the whole narrative design that a lot of these historical tapestries had. So it was just an amazing, amazing experience.
Well, you've answered my question, because what I was going to ask was what's the big difference between taking a class in the United States about a French technique
Mhm.
as compared to studying there? But it sounds like everything's different.
Everything is different. In addition to just building on what I learned from Jean-Pierre and Yael, there is this whole system in France where the tapestry knowledge was contained within each atelier's master weaver family for centuries, passed down generation to generation to generation. Part of this was competitive edge, part of this was ensuring quality of work, and just that's how the French culture approached tapestry making. So by the 1990s, there were a number of the current generation where they were no longer interested in learning tapestry, and many families, master weaver families, were facing their knowledge dying out.
Hmm.
And this was one of the reasons I was able to have that window of opportunity to go study with Giselle and Henri Grivet, because nobody in their family was interested in learning tapestry. And Giselle was facing that same thing of needing to pass on her knowledge. So I became part of that recipient of that knowledge. So it was, yeah.
Timing is everything.
Timing is everything. Yes.
That's wonderful. I
Yes.
had no idea. Well, I guess I do. I hear people talk about how it's in the family. They even, like in South America, it's in the family.
Mhm.
And I can't imagine what kind of a struggle that must have been. Because if your kids don't want to do it, your kids don't want to do it.
Right. Exactly.
Wow. Well,
And
I'm glad you were there.
yes. And since then, UNESCO declaring them a World Heritage Site, there's been new energy, new life in Aubusson. They have a whole center now called the Cité de la Tapisserie, where it's a museum, and there are workshops, and they're training the future master weavers there as well. It's quite thrilling to see how things have changed over the decades to this now.
Oh,
Yes.
wonderful.
Yes.
Happy ending. Happy ending to the story.
Yes.
Well, I was curious when you talked about as you change from technique to technique. This may be a goofy question, but so I'm assuming you gave up certain techniques or skills as you added other ones. Was that difficult? Was it okay? What was the most difficult about switching techniques and styles?
I think probably what was the most difficult was letting go of clean front, clean back. Because the ratio of the warp and the weft diameter and the set is very different in the European French Aubusson tradition.
Hmm.
From the traditions where I've learned in the Rio Grande and Mexican traditions, which was, rug making was the basis of the pragmatics, serapes and rug making. So you had wider spaces between the warps, thinner warp, and fatter weft. So you would have a little more drape of fabric if you're wearing a serape, or it would sit nice and flat on the floor. And of course, with that tradition, you would want a clean front and a clean back because you don't want lumpy rugs, with the ends sticking out. From the French tradition, the pragmatic was, well, basically hanging and insulation on cold castle stone walls. So having the ends sticking out the back with added insulation, shall we say, and not
Hmm.
needed to be clean because it just added insulation. Because in the Aubusson tradition, the diameter of the warp, the diameter of the weft, and the space in between the warps are about the same. You don't have room to needle up the ends or any of that. You half hitch everything when you begin and end your colors so that you have ends, but you just trim them to about an inch or a couple of centimeters on the back, and that you just leave them because they're anchored by the knots. So I needed to let go of that aesthetic of clean back, clean front.
Mm.
And I needed to change from weaving row by row from the front to weaving from the back, shape building.
Oh,
And once I understood the logic of shape building, it just helped my mind a whole lot because I could just focus on the details in one area of the tapestry instead of what was going on all the way across the row. So there were differences, but I embraced a lot of those differences when I realized the potential that I could achieve with expanded sense of imagery that I could do via shape building and some of the shading techniques that I was learning about.
well, one of the things that struck me about your work is that weaving is perpendicular. You got warp, you got weft, you got an intersection there.
Yes,
And
yes,
I love that your work ignores that. And this piece, this is called Desert Memory, I believe, right?
it is. Uh-huh.
The flowing lines and curves, especially that one right in the middle, well, all of it. Um, it's like, okay, what's your magic? It's just beautiful. And is this something that attracted you to this type of weaving, that you could do these beautiful curves?
Yes, yes. Being able to weave curves and find out a smoother way of, there's different areas where you can weave a smoother curve. So you have to think about the little steps you make to make those curves. So they're basically essentially a flat angle, getting slightly steeper, getting slightly even more steep. And in relationship to where the warp is and the fell line is, the flatter part of the curve is going to be smoother. And then the steeper curve, as it gets higher and higher, is going to be more notched as you make those steps. So you design accordingly to camouflage the notched areas of the steeper curve and to accentuate the smoother areas where you can get smoother curves to kind of create that sense of flow.
Well, it does flow. It just has a lovely energy and um yeah, what else can I say? It's just beautiful. So you talked earlier about how you switched from kind of weaving as you go to coming up with a design. And I loved it because you said that to get everything into the work, you realized you needed to start using a cartoon. I thought
Yeah.
that was an interesting way of saying it. Um, so we're going to show a sketch and then our cartoon and then the final product. So if you could talk about what a cartoon is. I don't want to, for people who don't do tapestry, they may not understand what we're talking about. So if you could first talk about what is a cartoon, and then can you describe how you went from drawing to cartoon to the final product?
Okay, so the cartoon is actually what it goes behind the warp as your guideline in the weaving process. It is kind of like an outline of shapes. You develop a code for yourself to give you a sense of where you're going to go. For like the curves, for example, you can see that it's flatter on the vertical. I'm weaving these from side to side. So in other words, I have woven this from one side of the tapestry to the other. So I have rotated the design so that the warp is running horizontally here. in relationship to the cartoon itself. So you'll see where the flatter part of the curve is, which will give me that nice, smooth, flowing edge. The cartoon is more a roadmap. I really view a cartoon more like a roadmap. It gives me a sense of where I need to change colors, where I need to change angles, where I need to introduce a new palette, where I need to introduce transparency, those pieces of information as I am weaving. And this is what goes behind my warp, so that I have it right there. As I'm peering through the warp, I see the cartoon itself. The reason why the lines are like really dark, thick outlines is I need to be able to see them through the warp. The drawing you see on the left here, that was the initial idea. Often I am thinking with a pencil in my hand and building the design as I am going. Sometimes I will use collage with gray tone papers. Sometimes I will use graphite pencil. Sometimes I will use India ink and gray tone watercolor pigments in kind of wet on wet washes. It really depends on the nature of the idea that I have brewing in my mind that I need to get into some kind of concrete form on paper. In this case, I used graphite pencil to develop the idea. I learned to work in values. This is one of the many, many things I learned when I was in Aubusson, was to develop my ideas in terms of values, rather than try and do the color right away. Once you kind of work out the values and the ideas in the values, where it's going to be dark, where it's going to be light, where it's going to be really textured and stippled, and where it's going to be more smooth or washed, that kind of I work out on the paper itself as the idea is brewing and growing in my mind. And once I get as far along as I can in the drawing form, then I will make the cartoon and know that it's now time for the loom to take over the idea. I will then go directly to my yarns to pick out my color palette and wind my bobbins, blending different colors together to get the effect that I want. And so you can see in the tapestry itself where I have areas where it's more speckled. So I have some mixes that have contrast in value. Then I have areas where the values are close together in the colors, and I have created a new color by having different strands of different colors in the same value in the Weft bundle. So there's a lot of play of color that goes on when I'm thinking about setting the palette and initially weaving as well.
When you talked about those drawings that you do you draw a lot? Do you get an idea and then you draw it? Or do you say, okay, I've got a project or something I want to do, I'm going to do a drawing for that? I mean, if I go to your house, are there like tons of notebooks just full of drawings that you've done, or?
Well, my studio has some framed drawings that I really liked, but a lot of people don't see all the initial scratchings that I do
Okay.
as I'm working on an idea. Usually it's something that really draws my attention, whether it's a piece of weathered wood, whether it's light on leaves outside my studio. It's something in nature usually grabs my attention. And I can tell that it's an idea starting to brew because I start obsessing about that. And how do I get that? How do I think about that in terms of weaving? And how, I just start obsessing about it. I know, we all get this way, whenever an idea grabs a hold of you. So I draw when I need to draw, I guess is the best way to say it. I don't do it as a daily practice. I know some people do, but I don't. I do it in spurts as I'm thinking about ideas that are brewing, I guess is the best way to put it.
Do you do you mix and match? You say, oh, this part would go good with this part from two different drawings, or are they usually of
Sometimes,
one time or one concept?
sometimes it just depends. When I'm actually launching into the tapestry design itself, I design full scale. So I have the drawing paper that I'm working with full scale. Usually it's out on a couple of tables. And I settle in on one area. Okay, I'm thinking this is where this will be in this area. So I'll work up that drawn part. And then as I'm working, then something else will suggest itself to me to do something adjacent to it or across from it, or, you know, that sort of thing. And ideas just build on each other. These designs really literally do grow. It usually takes me about 2 months to develop the designs for my large format works. So,
I was thinking how weaving horizontally rather than vertically.
mhm,
I was thinking how, sometimes if you take a drawing class, they want you to draw in a way that it makes you stop assuming, like when you draw negative space or draw with the wrong other hand. And I was thinking how doing it horizontally, you really must focus in on each particular thread and area rather than the overall picture of, oh, I'm going to make a tree, that you're thinking more minute of, I'm just doing this color. Is that true or am I way off base?
yes and no.
Okay.
When I am thinking about the overall design in the design phase,
Uh-huh.
sometimes I'm working minute detail because I need to get the shading that I'm thinking is going to happen in that area. Then sometimes I just kind of need an overall sense of where it's going to be and the overall shapes of the surrounding area. And then that will be more roughed in. And then as an idea develops, then the roughed in area gets a little bit more solidified. It's like something coming into sharper and sharper focus, I think is another way of putting it.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, I love the concept of having a drawing. And I was thinking about how a lot of artists will have an exhibit of their drawings for the final product.
Mhm.
Like a Van Gogh sketch before you see the big painting. And they have all these exhibits where they just show the drawing because it kind of gives you an idea about how the work got to where it was and maybe
Mhm.
give you some insight into what the artist was thinking or whatever. So what do your sketches help us see? If we had an exhibit of all your sketches, what do you think we'd see? What would
Oh,
we learn?
interesting question. I think what you would learn is my thought process, because the initial idea that got me started for the tapestry. Often that's what my sketches are about, are the initial idea. And then as I build on that idea, sometimes I'll have sketches that show that. I usually have the sketch of the actual design up on my wall when I'm weaving so that I can see, do I want to make that higher contrast or lower contrast in this area as I'm weaving? So the sketches will inform you about, okay, this is the initial idea that I could take as far as I could before then I had to go to the loom. And then when I'm at the loom, it's the loom and the weaving and the color blends that then take over. So it's the initial idea.
Okay, I like that. So how much do you stay true to a cartoon? You said that it kind of changes, but do you ever get to the point where you're going, I want to go back to weave as I go?
It depends on the idea that I'm working with. For my
Uh-huh.
large formats, I don't stick at religiously to the cartoon, but I do make sure my curves are really precise so that I have a very precise guideline in weaving curves. I will make sure that the different areas that I'm blocking in are fairly precise in terms of the angles and that sort of thing. But then within larger areas, I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to work it out with the weaving techniques. I figure that out as I'm weaving.
Oh,
So
really?
again, it serves
Huh.
as a roadmap for me. And I have enough weaving experience that I know I will figure it out. I trust myself that I will figure it out. Sometimes it means I have to weave and reweave a small area just to make sure that I get it just right, whether it's the color blends working, the contrast working right, or whatever it is the effect I want to achieve is happening. But you know, it's all an adventure.
Well, that kind of leads me to the next question, which is, excuse me, this next image is Veils of Time. It's just extraordinary. I love the color and the curves. Anyway, I just love this. And as you were talking about blending, I was struck because I watched some of your videos and I saw, what you had to do and getting ready. And I was struck by there's a lot of decision making you have to make before you even start weaving. And I
Yes.
hadn't thought about the blending of the yarns so that okay, for this section, I need blue and gray together, or I need this and this together. So a lot of those decisions are made even before you start weaving. You do a lot of work before you even get to the loom.
Yes, a lot of preparatory work before I get to the loom. Once I've got the design done and I'm now working with setting my initial color palette, I will wind a lot of bobbins, and then I probably will end up using maybe half of them. But it helps me to see a little bit more of what the color blends look like when I see them on the bobbin. It gives me more of a feel for what that might be when it's woven. And then once I'm at the loom, the first 6 to 8 inches of weaving is very slow going because I am setting the palette. I'm setting, okay, this blend has enough contrast. This blend over here is working nicely with what's next to it. Because as you know, working with colors, they influence each other depending on what's beside it. So it's actually in that initial palette setting that I'm making those final decisions. But having pre-wound a bunch of options really helps me to think about, okay, no, I don't want to go green direction with this gray. I want to go brown direction with this gray. Or I may want to incorporate maybe a little bit of this peachy color in with the gray, or, whatever the design is requiring. So I'm constantly making a lot of decisions in that first to 6 to 8 inches of weaving. And once that is set, then it becomes a little bit more apparent how I'm going to proceed in different areas.
Okay, so I'm one of those people that I try it and I kind of look at it and go, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? I
Yeah.
take it out. I try another one, getting better, but it still doesn't work, and I take it out. So do you ever do that? Or are you
Yes.
beyond that? You know now what's going to work.
I never know precisely what's going to work because I never have the same palette for each tapestry. So it's
Oh,
always related because I do a lot of earth-based stuff. So there's a lot of earth tones, but then, there are other variations off of that. So what could I say? Um, I usually find out, and I just weave, a little 2-inch area or something beside another shape that I've already figured out. Okay, I want this color blend here. And I'll look at it and see what it looks like woven next to each other, going, oh, no, that's not enough contrast. It blurs too much. I need to have a little more contrast. Or no, that's too whatever, and it makes this one look strange, and so I'm constantly tweaking it. And I don't take out all that much, but it's put in, take out, put in, take out in a little 1-inch area kind of thing, yes.
that's reassuring. Um, you One thing I was struck by is that there's this community of tapestry weavers. You all seem to, well, not everybody, but I've heard you refer to other weavers. You're in other people's books. And I was really touched by something I saw, I think was on your internet, on your website somewhere. You talked about standing with Archie Brennan, who was also a very well-loved tapestry maker, tapestry artist, and that you were at an exhibit, and I think his piece was up and your piece were up, and you said you were just having this conversation back and forth about what you liked, what worked, and that kind of thing. And I was just struck by that because it just feels like there's this community of tapestry weavers. You and Tommye Scanlin, I've heard you talk about Rebecca Mezoff, and you support each other or you talk with each other. And how has that impacted on you and your work?
Oh gosh. Well, I was fortunate enough to join the kind of the tapestry community at a time before the internet, at a time when we were, a lot of us, feeling really isolated as individual tapestry weavers wherever we were in the country. So whenever there were conferences or group shows or openings, we delighted in seeing each other and being able to sit around the table and talk tapestry. And just being able to talk about our work and where we were wanting to go with it, or what we were frustrated by, or I'm stuck here, and I, just have these conversations informal over dinner or breakfast or wherever, whenever we had the good fortune to get together with each other. And the tapestry community kind of is built on that. And now, of course, with the internet and Facebook and Zoom, we can now see and talk to each other much more extensively than we were back in the 1970s and 1980s and 90s. And so I think part of the foundation of the community began with a lot of people then. And then, of course, it has now really expanded to incorporate a lot more people interested in tapestry. So the isolation is less extensive as it used to be for all of us. So how it's impacted is feeling a mutual respect and appreciation for each of us in the direction we're going in tapestry. Me personally, and also just delighting what each other is doing and what direction they're going in as well with it. It's just been really delightful.
Oh, I bet. I can't imagine how I hear these names and I thought I would be in a room of greatness, and just to be able to sit and absorb whatever people said, it would be wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Well, we're going to look at another one of your works. This is called Remnant of a Dream, and it's so powerful. Oh, it's just so powerful. And there's a theme to it. So first, if you would just talk about this work, the theme and what it means for you.
So this was one of the first major tapestries I designed and wove after Aubusson. I have before Aubusson and after Aubusson. This is
The
after after Aubusson. And what I was struck by when I was walking amongst the streets and seeing all that I was seeing was the interesting colors of stone, the different grays, the different tinges that those stone would take. I found myself obsessively talking about, getting obsessed with things. I was taking pictures of rocks and stones and house walls and cathedral stones. And I was just really fascinated by what all of that really represented in terms of being built by hand, being built by human hands. And then I got to thinking about all that is recorded in stone, whether it's the Lascaux cave paintings, whether it's earthen pots that are fragments now existing, whether it was onions like Stonehenge, or whether it was here in the desert Southwest with the Anasazi cliff dwellings. That became kind of a thematic idea as I was working on this design. So I wanted to say something about all of that, and I wanted to say something about kind of the stream of time that flows through all the centuries that humans have been doing things by hand in stone. So the other thing I was thinking about was the kente cloth strip weaving, how you make a cloth out of strips. And I was thinking about that as kind of the metaphor for the stream of time. So that's why I have these kind of ribbony wavy ribbons going across this as kind of the stream of time flowing. And then the placement of earthen pots and the horses that are referencing the Lascaux cave paintings, the universal hand imprint that appears in multicultures around the globe, then reference to Stonehenge and reference to the Anasazi cliff dwellings in the brick pattern, and then the horizon line of the mesas. So that was kind of what went all in my thinking as I was designing this piece and weaving it. And so theme of time, theme of just the flow of time, I guess is the best way to describe this.
Do you normally have themes for your works? Do you find that that's important to have a theme
I
and
find
not just an image?
I find the themes actually are appearing in all of my works. There's the theme of the mythic theme, where the weaving and spinning the world into being. When Joseph Campbell was being interviewed by Bill Moyers, on the power of myth, I got to thinking about and thinking about what would be my myth. And as all of us, weavers and spinners, it is weaving and spinning the world into being. So I wanted to have a presence of kind of the woven grid or suggestion of it. So that's flowing in a lot of my works. Then there's the whole idea of geologic time and the deepness and largeness of geologic time. So there's a lot of that that appears into my works, whether it's the gastropod spirals, whether it's the mesa lines or strata in my layers of tapestries and layers of rock that then appear in my tapestries. So there's that piece of it too that just kind of creeps in. And I grew up in Kansas on the edge of the prairie in the Flint Hills area. So there's the whole idea of the texture of grasses, wind blowing through grasses, the prairie once being the bottom of an ancient sea, Precambrian seas, and then the fossils and invertebrate fossils that are now in that strata. So there's just all of that that kind of rumbles through my mind in the background, and it kind of keeps creeping in to my tapestries as, thematic. Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. That's just lovely. What's next for you?
I'm working on a book.
You heard it here, folks. You heard it here.
I've been poking at it for the last several years and realized that it's time now to put some of this knowledge that I've learned via oral tradition, especially when I was in Aubusson, get it documented and in a form that it can be shared. I'm sharing a lot of it in my classes and in my teaching, but to have it really organized in a very clear fashion so that anything from weaving strategies when you're working with complex areas to further explaining different kinds of hachures, which is a type of shading technique, and how they work and how the design principles behind hachures, understanding that so then you can understand how hachures can work to create three-dimensional form, transparency, folding and bending planes, all that kind of stuff. So I'm working on that. I don't know how far along I'm going to get on it, but I want to get far enough along that I can actually put together a proposal to send out to a publisher. So I'm at the stage now of really trying to get it into draft form so that
I cannot imagine people not wanting that book. Oh, the world's excited. Everybody watching is going, all right, let's see it. We want that book. We want that book.
In a couple of years, maybe it'll
okay, all right.
But it's going to be a while.
You're also teaching this summer at Convergence, right?
I am. I'm teaching the hachures workshop, and I'm also teaching a drawing for tapestry seminar. The hachures workshop is a 3-day workshop, and then the seminar is a 3-hour seminar, and it got so popular that they added another section of it. So now there's 2 sections of it on Sunday. I'm teaching the same thing twice, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, and then teaching the workshop Monday through Wednesday after that. So yes.
And I would encourage anyone who wants to take the workshops or the classes and it's full, be sure you sign up on the waiting list because you just never know. There might be another section. So sign up for them. Well, you know what? We have lots of questions.
Okay.
So let's start checking out some of these questions. You may have answered them as we go. A lot of people are asking about what kind of yarn do you use?
Okay, I use a variety of yarns, some of which are no longer being produced, unfortunately, but my favorite yarn is the DMC Medici yarns, which is no longer being produced. It's a nice, thin, fine yarn. It's comparable to the Weaver's Bazaar fine yarn in kind of weight and density. I also like the Patternay and Crewel weight yarns. That's no longer being produced, but it's similar to the Anahera yarns that's being produced in New Zealand. Then there's
And these are wool?
These are wool.
Okay.
Listing right now are wool. Then there's the Appleton yarns, which are produced in the UK. Then there's my mother's. I have my mother's range of yarns, still hand dyed, hand spun yarns that I keep throwing into my tapestries in dibs and dabs. For sheen, I like to use a number 8 pearl cotton or silk to get a little bit of extra sheen. Sometimes I will use linen to do sumac, to do textures of grasses. Those sorts of yarns are what I use, a variety in my Weft bundles. And one of the lovely things I learned from Joan Baxter, I love Joan Baxter's work, is that she freed me up to being able to use any kind of yarn as long as the diameter of that Weft bundle is consistent. You can use anything, she basically said. And I thought, wow, okay, that really opens up the range of possibilities. So I've been really having lots of fun exploring all of that as well.
Do you dye your yarn?
I do not dye my yarn. I use pallets of yarns already commercially dyed to get my blends.
And the weft is also wool?
The weft is warp. The weft is wool. The warp is cotton, same
Okay.
twine.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Oops. Sorry, got stuck
That's
there.
all right.
Meg Wilson wants to know, what are your thoughts about texture in tapestry?
Well, it's lots of fun. If your tapestry seems to need that kind of raised surface textural component, by all means use it. Yeah.
Maybe I missed this, but somebody's asking, why is the cartoon opposite direction from the sketch and the finished image?
I weave from the back, so it's going to be often it's a mirror image of what the
There you go.
sketch is.
Somebody wants to know about the loom behind you.
The loom behind me, you can see, is the backside of the Boss Fleece, the Aubusson style loom. It's built by Pierre and a woodworker friend of his. Was built for a number of his apprentices when he was doing the San Francisco Tapestry Workshop back in the late 1960s and early 1970s. He would produce these looms in batches for his apprentices.
Really?
And I was lucky enough to get Christine Loffer's Aubusson loom when she was switching from going to low warp to high warp weaving. So this is, I'm the second owner of this loom. Its footprint is about 7 feet by 7 feet. So it's a substantial amount of space that it occupies. I can weave up to about 63 inches on it in width, and that's plenty wide for me right now. So.
Oh, this is a good question. I should have asked some of this along the way. What sizes are your finished tapestry? What do you normally weave in? What size?
Oh gosh, it ranges. When I'm working on large ideas, I find I need to have more room. So anywhere from 60 inches, 63 inches by so far about that square. So 63 inches square so far is about the largest I've gone. The smallest is doing these small format little things, 4 inches by 4 inches, like 4 selvage tapestries that you can do a lot of interesting experimental work with, working small format. So I have a range of sizes I do.
Do you frame your work?
The little pieces I will mount and have a little frame around it because the little pieces need kind of an environment for them to be seen effectively. But for the large pieces, larger than maybe 2 feet, 18 inches, 2 feet, larger than that, I do not frame.
I just wanted to clarify, somebody's asking about this. Like your loom is, the pieces are this way, the warp is up and down, vertical, but you weave horizontal, right?
So
I'm saying that wrong.
I weave intentionally with rotating the design. So in other words, I'm still weaving like a regular weaver does, with the fell lines, but the design has been rotated so that when I am hanging the tapestry, it is hanging by the wefts instead of hanging by the warps.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to say.
That would be the Aubusson tradition. There are some tapestries where I will do warp-wise because that's what it calls for.
Oh, okay.
But there are times, large format, I usually try to hang it by the wefts because of the weight factor. It's stronger in general to hang by the wefts over time.
All right, this is a tapestry question because I have no idea what she's talking about. This is from Janet Moore. How do you use the bones? That is, how do you beat in your weft when using bones?
Okay, bones refers to the Aubusson bobbins that we've been nicknaming bones.
Oh.
Just in case you want to know what we're talking about. So I am beating my tapestry with a hand beater, and if I need a small area, I will use the tip of my awl to beat in little tiny areas. So between my fingers, the tip of the awl, and the hand beater, that's how I pack it in.
I'm sorry, some of these we've answered, so I'm trying to zip through these.
That's fine.
Somebody just said your examples are wonderful. They are. Like somebody just asked about the loom and you just answered that.
That's
Oh, do you weave commissions? Are you
Uh,
mostly commissions?
I have an occasional commission come my way. Usually it's private, but mostly I'm weaving whatever seems to need to be woven. Tapestries that need to be woven usually are what I'm doing. But occasionally I'll have commissions.
Somebody wants to know what's the difference between a high loom and a low loom.
Low warp is like horizontal. So it's like a floor loom, only it's, it's a tapestry loom that can handle the tension. High warp is the vertical loom.
Okay. And you probably answered this, but I'm going to ask you again. What was the attraction of weaving from the back?
There are several things that are about good for weaving from the back. In the Aubusson tradition, because it is a low warp loom, you're leaning against what you've already woven. Then, as you know, when you lean against something, you brush the nap up. It gets a little fuzzy on already the woven area. So weaving from the back keeps the front pristine as it's going around that front beam. There are also techniques that are way easier to use weaving from the back. And it's way easier to find the color that you dropped over here and pick it back up and start it again when you can see where it is. When you're weaving from the front, it's more like a bird's nest in the back and you're fishing around trying to find the color you need. So you spend time fishing, sometimes frustration too. So that's some of the reasons for weaving from the back. And it also really depends on how your brain is wired.
Yeah.
I think really easily upside down and backwards. Other people, it makes their brains hurt. So, you gotta go with what is good for your brain,
There you go. Where can people see your work right now? Are you exhibiting anywhere or will be?
Everything is home right now. You can see it on my website for sure. I think there'll be an instructors exhibit at Convergence, so I'll probably
Yes.
keep there. For sure. And I know here in New Mexico, there's going to be a group show between the tapestry artists here in Albuquerque with Las Arañas Weaving Guild and then the tapestry artists of Northern New Mexico. We're going to do a group show at Los Alamos at the Fuller Large Arts Center. That'll be, I think, in September of this year.
Oh, wonderful.
So I'll have a piece or two in that show as well. I'm not sure.
Great, great.
So.
Well, I can't believe I have to say stop, but we have to stop. This has been wonderful.
Lots of fun for me.
I hope so. I could listen to you talk all day. This is just fascinating. I love your work. I can't wait to see you this summer at Convergence.
It'll be a
And
lot
I
of fun.
envy all of those people in your class. I want to thank our sponsor today too. Here's Elizabeth's website, Elizabeth Buckley, tapestryartist.com. Go check out our website. Beautiful images, gorgeous images, all kinds of information. So be sure you check out her website. And then I do want to thank our sponsor. It was very nice of Camelin Leone. It's not an A on the end. For sponsoring today. I appreciate it. Camelin, I hope you'll appreciate this today. I know you're a fan. You said that you had taken her class before, so it's nice that you're sponsoring Elizabeth. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. If you would like to sponsor an episode of Textiles and Tea, or your business, or your guild, or a group of you want to get together and sponsor an episode, please do. You can learn more at weavespindye.org. Go to the Textiles and Tea tab, and you can learn more about being a sponsor. Convergence is coming, as we were talking about. Elizabeth will be teaching there. There's classes available. And again, if you're interested in a class, please sign up for the wait list, because Elizabeth's already added another class, and the artists that you might want to see or might want to take a class with, you might be able to do that. The shuttle spindle and die pot, it's on its way out. It's at the printer right now and getting ready to be mailed to you. And it's going to have travel and workshop in it. And this year we've added even more. We're doing stories and articles about travel and workshop, as well as the travel and workshop ads. So if you are thinking about, I know it's hard right now, it's cold, it's snowy, it's hard to think about going out and going on vacation. But if you're thinking about your fiber trips within the next year or so, besides Convergence, these people will be advertising in the magazine about places to go, conferences, so you could start making your plans. And then also Thursday at 1 o'clock, we have Travel and Workshop Live. Please sign up. You can watch it whenever. You don't have to watch it live. It's recorded. You can watch it when you get home from work or you have a minute. But it's a wonderful way to see some of these events and the graphics, especially if you're thinking about taking a travel trip. Oh, the images that you'll see are wonderful. Conferences, they're going to be talking about who's going to be there, activities that are going to happen. So I encourage you to check that out. Again, it's Thursday at 1 o'clock at Eastern time. Sign up. You can watch it whenever. And then look for our magazine coming out. Shuttle, Spindle, and Die Pot will have a lot about traveling this year. Want to thank everybody who has joined or donated. Your donation helps these programs, whether it's Textiles and Tea, Travel and Workshop, all the things that we offer, they happen because of your donations and your membership. You can join on weavespindie.org, or you can call the office and we'll be glad to help you with that. If you've missed any episodes, you can watch those also. You can even watch them on the HGA Facebook page. You can also watch them on YouTube, HGA YouTube. Be sure you sign up, because if you do, then you'll get a notice that another episode's been uploaded. Next week, we have Elizabeth Ashdown. We are excited to have her. I hope you have a wonderful week. I look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. Happy tea.